somebody who's lived their life in a good way, who has taught language, culture, hunted, gathered, gave of others, and they obtain that title of elder by their deeds and by their wisdom. Now, it's by an age. And every tribe's a little different. For the Mille Lacs band, it's age 55, so I have crossed that to be a baby elder now, as we call ourselves. And that's a new revelation in my life. But elders always come first. They always come first for surgeries, they come first for wellness. And if they sit down, I tell my students at SIRVS, MinSnap, and the bond between, you always ask them, do you need coffee? Number one. Two, do you need any water with you? Okay? Watch when families come in. Pet clinics in tribal communities is a family affair. This is multi-generational homes. You've got grandma and grandpa, you've got auntie and uncle, you've got a mom and dad, you've got all the kids coming in. And they've got 3 dogs on one hand and two cats in the other, and it looks like just a big circus. That's where we come in. That's where you come in. Because we know there has to be paperwork done. And we're too ashamed and embarrassed about maybe bringing our dogs in without collars. You know, we're bringing our dogs in because maybe they don't look the best. But we're not there to judge. You are in our community. You are a guest on tribal land. And if you say the wrong thing, you can be asked to leave and never come back with that. So when I have students come in there and say, well, I am your gatekeeper. I am basically, the guy who says, if I see somebody need help, you get over there. Because I want to make sure that our families feel, coming into their own community centers, that the students, the groups who are there, understand that they are guests. And there to be of great customer service to our families, to help them hold their animals, to help them fill out the paperwork, especially for elders who have bifocals and trifocals, to sit down there and help them complete everything in a good way, to do that. Because it started with us with just one clinic. Now the Mille Lacs band, I have land in 3 Minnesota counties. I have an 85-mile square jurisdiction. And we were doing one clinic with SIRVS for all districts. That's 85 miles. Needless to say, we were making a small dent in the need. Because we were seeing many stories of health disparities in our tribal community. When I was still in patrol with the tribal police department, we had a bad parvo outbreak. And all of you in this room know how dangerous that is for dogs who are outside dogs. And it got to the point where we had no other option because of the cost of trying to control this, that our chief executive, Art Gabo, and our Health and Human Services Commissioner made the decision that we were going to have to shoot and put dogs down. And that is a horrible thing to do. Is to go in your squad car and look at your 4-legged relative and have to shoot him in the head because this parvo outbreak was getting beyond our control with that one. And it was a horrible thing. Or, as we would see a lot of times, I'd be on patrol and you would see an emaciated female dog wandering around, middle of winter. And you knew there's puppies someplace. And unfortunately, they probably were not alive. And a lot of times, we end up with a cynical word we call popsicles. Because we would find an emaciated mother female dog, we would track her down, crawl under somebody's house, and sure enough, there'd be a litter of frozen dead puppies at 25 below zero out. So it started with one clinic. And with time, we would do the second weekend in November. And the other districts where I live, my district, I live in District 2H Munising, they started asking, well, what about our districts? Can't we get one for us? Because I can't drive 85 miles to District 1. I don't have a vehicle. I don't have a driver's license. I don't have gas money to do that. And again, our spirit world, things happen for a reason, came together. All of a sudden, I met what is now called the Bond Between and MinSnap. And they were willing to add to our pet clinics. So we go from 1 clinic a year to 2. And after several years, 2 went to 3. Several years more, 3 went to 4. And finally, after 15 years, 4 went to 5. As in every one of our districts now has their own pet clinics every year on an established schedule. So every family knows that on this weekend is our clinic. And the last one we got established was from the Laxband urban area in Minneapolis. Because I grew up listening to the stories from my elders about equal services. No matter where you live, we should have equal services. And vet care was the same thing with our urban area. So we use All Nations Church now in Minneapolis, and we use MinSnap, and that was our final clinic that we established. But again, this took 15 years. And it took SIRVS, and it took the Bond Between, and it took MinSnap, understanding that this is a lifetime commitment. Our families want to know that you're coming back the same weekend every year. You're talking about education today too. And I will tell you that the SIRVS, the Bond Between, and MinSnap has really, through their gentle care, talking with their families in a good way, has really done amazing work in education. Where once our families feared spay and neutering, okay, they thought it was going to be the bad thing for their four-legged relatives. They knew that vaccines were good, but we were trying to deal with an overpopulation of unplanned litters. You know, and we could use a heavy hand, but we worked together as a team to provide, I always say, culturally competent education that showed them that spay and neutering is in the best interest and the best health of their four-legged relative in their homes. And because of this, we have now seen cats in our communities. You never saw cats, because cats were food. It was an outside cat. The packs of res dogs were just, that was a snack for them. But now we're seeing cats in our communities because we're providing the care to do that. And the fact that our families don't have to leave home. We're in their tribal community. We're in their districts. They can walk to their own community center. No implied bias. See their friends. See their relatives. Share some coffee. Share some laughter. And getting their dog or cat healthy again with that one. You know, one of the cute stories I like to say is, out in District 3 over in Ojibwe, over in Pine County, which we have Dr. Glorious here, who's helped out here a few times with our clinics every year, is we had a local breeder res dog. He's a pit bull cross, seen life, scars, bitten ear, but a happy guy. But his owner knew his dog needed care. But he had no driver's license, had no vehicle, didn't have the funds to pay for vet care. But his dog was just this happy old lug guy who would always come to the front door of the clinic and welcome you there. But he was pretty ashamed that he couldn't take care of his dog. When they came out to do a pet clinic, there's no judgment. He didn't get the looks of an off-reservation vet clinic. He felt welcome. His dog knew where he was going. He opened the door, he walked right in. And there was nothing more amazing than seeing this 24-year-old young man leaving with 2 big Ziploc bags full of medication that in no way could he ever afford. And he walked away with his old trusty res dog, looking at each hand, at each bag of medications, and knowing finally in his life he could give the care he needed for his dog without judgment, without implied bias, without anybody criticizing the care of which he gave the dog before. Because he was in his own community, and he could walk there, and he could walk home. And that's what working in Indian country is. It's about understanding the historical traumas that you are coming into. Understanding we have a history of a lot of unplanned litters because we don't have access to vet care, or we don't want to face the implied bias of going to an off-reservation vet care. And as we know, spay and neutering and wellness is not inexpensive. You know, you're talking over $400 sometimes for surgery services. So for our elders in our family, is this, do I feed my kids or get my dog spayed or neutered? You know, for an elder, do I pay for my medications or do I get my dog his wellness, you know, the captain wellness exam? It's just that reality that many tribal nations feel and experience. Now, some are doing better than others because we have Indian gaming, we have casinos. But from the ones who are closer to the urban areas, Lax Band, you know, and other ones, yes, we have maybe a little more solid financial base compared to more northern tribal communities, which doesn't have a large population base, or it's really a drive to get to. Their casinos don't give them the revenue to cover a lot of services. You know, it may provide some basic resources, but it doesn't provide them. And then with the Mille bands, we initially, you know, was coming up, and now each district representative, like today, we're waiting for representatives today, sponsor each of the clinics. And I tell you, when they can walk into their own community center and they see all these multi-generational, their friends, their neighbors, laughing, seeing their dogs and cats getting proper care and spay and neutering, and realizing this, all this cost me is opening my community center for them and purchasing a lunch and a dinner for them to show my appreciation, to giving, you know, 26 surgeries and many, many wellness checks done, and realizing that the cost of sponsoring it was probably less than 2 wellness checks. But when they see the happy 4-leggeds, it means they have happy 2-leggeds in the community they serve. You know, as my daughter always said, we're saving our communities one paw at a time. And I think that's really true. And depending where you call home, because you're from all over different parts, some of you are other states and all that, you know, if you want to do outreach, I always say, find maybe a person like me, just to do that feel or two. And really, I always say, you can find an emergency manager like me, that's a good start. We know our communities, we know what our needs are, we know what our risks are, and we can tell you if outreach from your organization will be welcomed or not. And maybe we're not ready yet for that, or maybe we are. So that hopefully is somebody like myself kind of help guide you into that process. Because what we see sometimes if outreach happens, and maybe it falls on deaf ears because it wasn't the right person. You know, I always think those of us in public safety are probably your best outreach because we deal with the calls for, fortunately, you know, medical calls because of dog and cat injuries or bites with that one, or fortunately you may have ordinances of running loose and things like that. So it may be the right place to start. in urban, or large urban native populations, if there is a large urban native center, like in Minneapolis, the American Indian Center now that reopened, or in St. Paul, or if there's one where you live at in your urban area, Duluth or Largo-Moorhead, reach out to them. They know their urban populations. And they can probably tell you, hey, if that would be valuable to their urban members because they know who they are. And they probably know what services are needed for them. And especially when it comes to their four-legged relatives, because it's the same thing. It's expense, it's driving to the vet, because a lot of times it's typically in suburbs, not right in the heart of a large urban population. And again, it's the cost of it. So there's many factors to constantly think about. And knowing that if they say they're not ready for it, don't push. Say, hey, I hear what you're saying to me, but can I call you next year and see if this might be a thought process? I know you want to talk internally to see what your leadership may feel about this. But do things in a good way. Ask and wait to see if they're receptive or if they're not. And again, if you are receptive, I always tell groups, start simple. Even just as a wellness initially, start with something simple and keep doing it every year. And I will try to tell you, all of you, if you start this, just what we've learned, tribal communities like when it's the same time every year. So they can put it on their calendars and plan for it. So they can make sure they've got a vehicle available, or tell the relatives, hey, can you drive me to the community center because I can bring my dog and cat in for that. And also with your staffing of these, if you can be consistent, it really makes our families much more comfortable.